Hey YouTube. All right, so welcome back. It's been a little while, but I have received requests to talk about my labor and delivery experience. So that's what I'm here to do today. All right, so I carried twins full term. I actually carried them 9 months, which was 38 weeks and 3 days. So let's talk about that experience. So from the beginning, I wanted to carry the babies until 38 weeks. That was a desire of mine. And it was also prophesied to me that that would be 38 weeks. And that's exactly what happened. They had to go ahead and induce me because anyone who has had twins, you already know that they don't want you to go full term. Sometimes people allow you to go like I said, about 38 weeks like I was, but it's very rare that a doctor would approve you to go beyond that point. So they gave me an induction date. I actually was like, I knew that the 38 weeks was my goal, but I was okay if they came before because like closer, like maybe like 37 and 5 days, something like that. Because at that point I would know they were healthy and strong and ready to come out. But if they did, because I wanted to have like the whole my water's breaking type experience. But I didn't get that because I had to be induced because the babies were so comfy, they didn't want to come out at the time. So May 14th, I went in to the doctors or to the hospital and got checked in, and they started monitoring me. I was already having like contractions, like Braxton Hicks contractions and stuff like that. So we were all, and the baby, and my son was head down. My daughter was transverse, but my son was head down. So we were thinking like, okay, you know, it's just gonna happen. We're good to go. But we were in labor for 3 days. 1, 2, 3 days, y'all. So the first 7 hours, I was a champion. I was like, look, I'm not doing no medicine. I'm going to do this as long as I can. And I did. For 7 hours, I didn't take any medicine. I didn't even cry. I just was able to breathe through everything. So when you get induced, what happens is you have to go in. They will monitor you, monitor the babies and all of that. But then they have to give you, I think it's called Pitocin, so that the contractions begin. So they have to like make your body go into labor, and so that's why it's called induced. So because they literally have to make your body start going into labor, and so that's what they did. And so they used the medicine, and they used it to try to get my contractions to go on and get harder and stronger and stuff like that. So I was on no epidural, nothing like that. I was just pushing through them. I was, beginning to feel them. I actually, believe it or not, I took birthing classes. So I will suggest those that are getting ready to have babies to take your birthing classes, because honestly, they say that you will forget what you learned, but I didn't. I actually utilized some of the things that I learned. The breathing techniques that they teach you in class, I actually utilized them when I was in labor. I would breathe and count to 10. And then by the time I was done with the 10, that contraction would have ended. I had a moment to prepare myself for the next one to come on. And so I think that's the reason why I was able to go so long without medication, because I was able to kind of concentrate on my breathing more than the contractions. And they weren't terrible or really, really, really hard. It is a feeling that you can't really compare to anything else, because your whole body is kind of like contensing or tensing up, contracting. So it's not really something you can compare to something else, but you can breathe through them, and that's what I did. So after about when I got to about the 8th hour, they kept upping the medicine as far as the Pitocin. They kept upping it because they were trying to cause for contractions to come harder and harder, so that the closer your contractions are, the closer you are to birthing your babies, because all that tightness is kind of pushing the babies along. So they kept upping it, and by that time, it was the next day. They checked me, and I only had dilated. I think the furthest I had gotten the first day was like 3 centimeters. I think it was 3. So at that point, they're like, oh my goodness, okay, we got to up this again. So they kept upping it. And the more they would give me more Pitocin, the harder and the tighter the contractions were, because they were trying to force, the babies to go ahead and come out. So now we're on to day 2 at this time. So after day 1, no babies. They're still inside. They're still fine, but nothing's happening. So day 2, they check me again, and we're like, ooh, we're going to go. It's going to be on May 15th. And let me tell y'all, check me again, and I had only gotten to 5 centimeters, y'all. 5 centimeters. So at 5 centimeters, they was like, all right, we're going to just give you another 12 hours. By the end of the 12 hours, we'll check you again and see if you progress and what we'll do next. So we get to the end of the 12 hours. I had not progressed. I was still at 5 centimeters. I was still breathing through the contractions. But before that piece, I then asked for the epidural, because the contractions begin to increase more and more, because the medicine was, they actually gave me the highest dosage they could give me, because they were trying their best to make them go ahead and come out. So yeah, it at that point, the contractions became real, and I still didn't cry. I was still breathing through them. And so after that, we went ahead, and that was the 12-hour mark. So they checked me again. I was still at 5 centimeters. So they said, look, we're going to break your water. I did not like that feeling. That was really odd for them to go in, and whatever tool they used, they broke the water. It felt like I was peeing on myself forever, like Niagara Falls. It was really weird. But once that part was done, they said, yeah, and then normally you break the water, it's closer chances that the babies are gonna go ahead and, get to moving. 24 hours later, well, let's say 12 hours later the next morning, they come back in and check me, and they're like, let's see if you progress. If you progress, then, the baby's probably gonna come in its own, we're good to go. And they checked me. I had not progressed. I was still at the same place. And that was when I shed my first tear, real tear at that point, because they told me, okay, it's day 3. Ezekiel's water has been broken for 24 hours. Everybody's fine, but we can't take any chances. So let's go ahead and schedule a C-section. So I was told about the possibility of a C-section a while ago, but they knew that wasn't what I desired. I desired a vaginal birth. I desired to birth them naturally if I could. And so I was hoping that after those 7 hours that something was going to happen, but it didn't. So day 3 came. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning, and they said, okay, we're going to go ahead and have to give you a C-section. I did not want it, you guys. That was when tears started rolling down my eyes, and I was like, God, I did not want to get a C-section. But if this is what's going to be best, at this point, I can't risk Ezekiel's life or anything like that, because his water had been broken so long. So we went ahead and got me all dressed up, and got my husband all dressed up, and they took me in the room to do the C-section. When I was in there, I remember, because you don't like go to sleep, you're just numb. So they actually, for me, whatever the numbing stuff was, it didn't really work as well. I don't know if it was just because my mind was so strong, it would just kind of reject it. But it would work on one side of my body, but not the other. So when the lady would kind of prick me with stuff, I could feel everything. And I'm like, yeah, I still feel that. So the more I would say I could still feel it, the higher they try to go up with medicine. So the epidural, I didn't really care for that process. And I think it was because the mental anxiety I was putting on myself, because so many people talk about you can get paralyzed if you move too much, and so my mind was like, oh my God, don't move. And you're laying over something like this, in this position, and they're going up your spine. So yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, I was on the machine, on the thing, and nobody can be in the room with you but you and the lady that's doing it. So she went to go do the epidural, and it took forever. And I was just like, probably because my mind was thinking about it so much, I was just like, this is so long. Oh my gosh. As far as epidural, that's how I felt. And then they found the place, and they went ahead and did it. I will say it felt like forever, and I did not really like that part of the process. I could feel it whenever the stuff went up my back. I just didn't really like the epidural. It wasn't painful. It's just something I didn't really care for within the process. So then they take me into the operating room, and they go ahead and then eventually at this point I become numb from like my stomach area down. So all I remember is my mouth got extremely dry. That was probably one of the worst parts of it all. It wasn't a horrible experience having a C-section. It was really two things that I didn't like about it. My mouth getting extremely dry to the point where I'm laying there and I'm like asking and begging the nurses and doctors to put water on my lips because my mouth was so dry. And they did it, but it was super duper dry. And then the shaking, because I had so much medicine in me, I was literally going like this on the table, like my arms were just like, and it's cold in there. So you're laying there, your arms are shaking, you're like, and your mouth is dry. So I did not like those two things about it. I did not like. I could feel them. I didn't feel when the knife cut my stomach open. Oh, and they cut me this way. I don't have it down. It's a little tiny line right above my like pelvic area, and it's a really, I think the line's probably even gone. I don't even see the line, but it was a really, really tiny line. Still trying to figure out how in the world did they get two huge babies out of this little tiny line, because my babies were not small. They weren't preemies at all. They were full-term babies. Ezekiel was like a little from 8 pounds, and Raymond was a little from 6 pounds. So I'm still not sure how they got it out of that little tiny cut they made. Not really sure. So it was 14 pounds pretty much that I was carrying around. So anyway, so at that point, I felt the moving when they were moving my body parts around inside my stomach. That kind of felt weird. It didn't feel like you didn't totally feel like terribly, but you still kind of feel the movement of the body parts and the babies. So once they took it out, I think in my mind I was just like, come on, hurry up and finish this whole process. Hurry. That's what I was thinking in my head. Like, I'm tired of laying here. I'm tired of shaking. I'm tired of being cold. My mouth is dry. Please, just do this. So, and I don't want to sound like it was like, oh my gosh, it just took forever. Because it wasn't a long process. I had them at, I believe it was 10:05 and 10:07, somewhere in that time frame. So it wasn't extremely long. But in your mind, you just really, really want to see your babies. So anyway, so when the babies came out, the doctor was holding my son, was like, he looks just like his dad. Then he pulls my daughter out. She looks just like her mom. But they're like holding the baby with my body open and the other baby's just sitting in my stomach. I'm like, this is really weird. So I was not in a position to hold the babies directly because I was shaking so much and my body just felt like it just went through a lot. So I didn't want to hold them immediately. Some people do. I did not. I wanted them to be wiped off first because I didn't want to hold them with all that stuff on them. I think they kept a little bit on them or whatever because it's healthy for your baby. So if you can handle it, let them do it because it's healthy for the baby to have the stuff on them for a while. That was just my preference. I'm really like I don't know, I can't describe it. It sounds weird, but it's just me. So I didn't necessarily prefer to do that. So, but I was in such my body was still kind of shivering and stuff. So I didn't want to directly just pick them up. So I told them to give them to my husband. The funniest thing is I look over my shoulder at the babies, and for one, the room that they operate in is super bright. So you're like it's like a huge white room or something. And so I'm looking over at the babies and I'm like, who babies are those? Because I'm light skinned, right? But my babies were like pale white. I mean, they were like super. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, whose babies are those? Like, that's what I was thinking. Like, who thinks that? That's the first thing I thought. Whose babies are those? They're super white. That's what I thought. I know, weird, but that's what I thought. But then when it was time to wheel me back into the room, they put both babies on me. They gave me one on this side and one on this side. And that was when my life just like changed in moments. I was like, oh my gosh, I am now a mother, like officially a mom. And the funny thing was I looked down, and I can't remember if it was Zeke or Raymond at this point, but I remember looking down and one of the babies smiling at me. And I was like, oh my gosh, man, my heart just felt like it opened all the way up and everything felt like it was worth it. Like it felt worth the 3 days of labor, the 9 months of carrying them, the IVF treatments, the two, the miscarriage and the failed miscarriage as far as the first IVF transfer. So all of that, it felt so worth it all in that moment. It was like everything I went through, the whole process, even the 5 years of waiting Everything felt worth it at that moment, just to see them and to be able to hold them. Now, when I got in the room, the first thing I wanted to do was brush my teeth and put on deodorant. Like, I was like, can somebody wash my arms and brush my teeth? I know who thinks of that when they finish, but that was me. And the nurses were so sweet. They literally washed my arms, put on my deodorant, and brushed my teeth for me. And I so needed it because I felt like, ugh. I was like, I don't want my babies to be like, man, my mommy smells like. Of course, they didn't know what it smells like anyway, but it just felt really weird. So they did that for me, which was very, very amazing. Shout out to VCU. And so after that, I wanted to sleep, you guys. Like, my body was like, whew, what in the world? But then I had to go breastfeed, and I'm like, oh, because my son, he had like a super grip. Like, both of them knew how to grip, to latch. But my son gripped so hard. One time he bit my nipple and I was bleeding, and it was just an experience. So my goal was to go 6 months breastfeeding. I only got to about, I think, 4, and it wasn't as consistent as I wanted it to be. So, and that was primarily because the quicker, as soon as you breastfeed in the beginning, the best thing is to create a regimen in the very beginning, because that helps you to produce the most milk through the process. Whatever you produce in the first 24 hours, your body begins to tell your brain that this is what I need for these babies. And so you want to do as much as you can every 2 to 3 hours. And I was doing the best that I could, but of course I was learning, because for one, I had a C-section, so my body was kind of like, I was feeling a little bit of stuff. I was a little numb still and sore, and still trying to, breastfeed. So it was a process. I will say I have to do another separate video about how that process was for me, how it started and how it was throughout the tandem feeding piece, which is when you have 2 babies to breastfeed at once, which I was able to do and learn how to do. So I'll do a separate video about that. But so then my recovery process from the C-section, didn't take too long. I bled for a few days. I can't remember how long, but it wasn't long. And I wasn't in a lot of pain for a long period of time. I think I probably was in pain for maybe a couple of days, and then my body just started becoming normal. My breathing still was different. My energy level was a little different. And even now, sometimes my breathing is a little different from being cut open, but I'm just a little numb now. I used to be extremely numb, but now if I touch the area, it still feels a little weird. It's not 100% back to normal. And then with having twins, I do have a little skin on my stomach, so that part I'm still trying to work off. As you can see, I'm pretty small. You can see, but I am still working on the skin because I was so big in my stomach area. But yeah, all the other weight it literally came off with the breastfeeding, with the, I personally went overboard, and I don't suggest everyone doing that, but I would run in the heat. I would work out really hard if I could, and really hard according to my body type, or just push myself. When I didn't want to do it, I would do it anyway. I would carry the car seats, both of them at the same time. I still do that, but I would carry them wherever I can. I would push the car seats up hills. I would do everything I could to work my core, work my stomach, work my body, to really try to help my body just lose weight. I would even sometimes, and I don't suggest this, but sometimes I wouldn't eat dinner. I would just go to sleep, and make my body kind of like eat on or maintain the fat it already has, so it could eat on that and it reduced the fat on my body. It sounds weird, but that's what I did. Those are things that I did to kind of lose the pregnancy weight, because I was 6 pounds from 200. I've never been anywhere near 200 pounds in my life. So it was not just the 14 pounds on my stomach. It was a lot more. I gained about 60 pounds total for my pregnancy. So it was not just the 14 pounds in my belly. I literally gained weight throughout my whole body. But now I'm back to my before pregnancy weight and a little smaller than that. So I'm having to be really careful because I don't want to be skin and bones. So now I just have to work on just tightening up the skin on my stomach or whatever. But it was definitely all worth it. I definitely would love to have my tummy flat like it used to be. And I know that's going to take some more work. But I am still pleased that I lost a lot of the bloat and all of that stuff, and kind of got closer back to where I used to be. So that was my journey. My husband probably will give you guys some details from his perspective. I probably have to ask him to record his point of view. But that was the journey. So I hope that it helps somebody. Just let you know it's not horrible. Most people don't have to go 3 days of labor. That was just my story. But it was worth it. So I'm going to go now. Y'all have a blessed rest of your day. Bye.